All right, I guess we're live. Okay, I guess I'm just doing this stream today, kind of early. Sorry for the late notice, but I guess we'll go through and update the chat room app to use Mongo. We'll look at a couple things. If anyone comes online or has questions today, just ping me on Slack or hop in. All right, so we have Docker PS running in our terminal here, and we can check, the Docker containers we're running. From Friday, we have Postgres running, but we also have this Redis key value store database, and we also have Mongo, which is a document database. So we have two new databases, and you can see the ports that are, I should, I guess, post a link. Right, so our Docker PS command lists the containers. We have three databases. This is Mongo, the document database, key value, and Postgres. If you don't see any of these, you need to possibly restart. Now the Postgres one, Alice made a script that lets you go cd docker, wait a minute, cd just cost docker Postgres Docker scripts, and then / start Postgres container. So I think, hey, Karen. Welcome. I'm going through and doing some exercises. We're looking at our containers, Redis and Mongo, and we are going to convert this chat room app to use the Mongo backend. So right now we're in the careers and code sandbox, Gus Cost, Postgres Docker scripts. And, I'm actually going to rename, I think, that folder and put some other scripts in there, because I think that's it's worth doing. And then I think we will probably put the chat room app into a third folder, so that we have examples of each way. One with SQLize, one with nothing, and one with Mongo. Hi, Linda.
Hey. I don't look good.
Oh, well, I'm, that's fine. I should figure out, how do I don't know, like pin my video or something. Yeah, I can talk up in the corner here, see? Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we have right, our containers, Postgres, Redis, Mongo, and the first thing I want to do is, there's this folder, Postgres Docker scripts, and we have start Postgres container. It's already running, so it doesn't work, but I want to do cd ... and do mkdir. And so we're going to make scripts for things that are not Postgres. So I want to make a new directory. We'll just call them Docker scripts. And that makes a directory here. And basically we can kind of replicate what we're using, maybe a new naming convention, but very similar, just so that we have some easy ways to join and get to any of these containers. So I'm going to do new file and do Postgres Join. So this will be, we'll prefix each of the files with what we're doing, and we'll get the contents here. And we'll add Postgres start. And Postgres stop. And then we need this vars. Now, this is going to be, this name might be different for all the other containers. We might have several running at the same time. So I'm actually going to, we'll copy this. But we're going to modify what's in here, because rather than just having it be name, we should name this environment variable something that's a little less ambiguous. So I'll call it Postgres name. Save that, and then this has to go in everywhere where we're using Docker stop name. This is a Postgres script, so we're going to pass in this Postgres name. Okay, so we have our 3 Postgres scripts. Now we can add similar scripts. Let's add a couple for Mongo. And I'm not sure if we should bother with ones for Redis, because Mongo works pretty much the same way as Redis. And I don't know, there's not a whole lot to Redis. I don't think anyone really needs to practice it, because once you get the idea of what key value is and what it's good for, it's very good for that. And we're not going to do any demonstrations with like, that pub sub stuff or queues or anything like that, because that will take a while. So we'll just add Mongo start, and this we'll have a very similar thing here, but I'm going to go find the slides. Which I should have brought up earlier. My internet's going very slow.
I think it's because even for the streaming.
Oh, right. Yeah, that would do it. Yeah, the computer runs hot and it's just everything's slow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so indexes. Did you see yesterday about the indexes and stuff? Or
yesterday?
Not sorry, Friday. Thursday. Man, it's been yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I seen it. Yeah.
So we'll try out a little bit with getting the index to actually be used, so we can demonstrate that in Postgres, just to try it out. But let's get everything set up with Mongo here. So this is the command from the slides, and let's convert this to do sort of the same type of thing. So the first thing you do is that every .sh file, whenever you want it to execute on the command line, you do this thing at the top, which is called a hash bang, because this is a hash and this is a bang or an exclamation point. And what this does is it tells when you say I want to execute this script, this first line says what is going to interpret the script. So sometimes you'll see Python here, or I think you can do Node if you want scripts to be executable without having to say node myscript.sh. If you put this here, and this, I don't know if anyone went over this with node stuff, but if you put this here and say bin node, all you have to do is run it with the /, just like we're doing here. So in this case, because these are shell scripts, we're running it with bin bash, which is what the thing we always use inside Docker containers, and the thing it's where it's this thing we're running right now. So this is stuff that you could type right into your terminal, and we're going to execute it all at once by saying we're going to execute it with bash. So the first line in all of these is source./vars, that pulls in the environment variables. Let's add one in that vars folder and call it Mongo name, and that will be Mongo. And instead of the name being the Postgres name here, we'll say Mongo name. And there's no password by default. So Mongo, they're sort of notorious for sort of not having passwords and stuff set up by default. And there's a lot of, every once in a while, or they might have done something in response to this, but I think there's still like no default password. So what'll happen is someone will go scan the whole internet for this port 27017, which is the default. And if it's exposed, if it's on the public internet and it's got the default port, chances are nobody has bothered to set up the password either. So a lot of times people will just steal data from Mongo databases or delete it and hold it for ransom or whatever. Like, so just to be aware, like, don't just put your Mongo database on the internet where you can actually connect to it and leave it without a password. So that's not really a concern while you're developing locally. Nobody can, get to your computer because there's a firewall between it and the internet. But as soon as we start deploying this, we're gonna cover, how to sort of isolate, how to safely connect to your Mongo or your database from wherever else without actually having to allow anybody to connect to it, and then how to what's called tunnel, so that you can sort of secure a path for your own computer to connect to it, but anybody without the credentials that you keep on your own computer cannot do that. So there's a lot of concerns with that, and one layer that's common on a Postgres database or another, which is always having to set the password right away, is not here. Of course, in development, our password is not good at all anyway. It would be an inconvenience to guess that, but it is one extra thing that the Mongo does not have by default. So something to watch out for. Okay, so we don't need any password setup. We need the port. And instead of 5432, which is where Postgres runs, Mongo runs on 27017 by default, and we're not going to mess with that. I don't know if we need to link any kind of like Mongo data directory. Why don't we do the same thing so that you get the same advantage as you do with Postgres, which is that when your Docker container exits, you don't lose all of your data in Mongo. Because that's a pretty nice thing to have, and we might as well get that working. MongoDB data directory. Where is Mongo database folder on the file system? Okay. So there's a configuration and it's the default is data/db, but let's confirm that. If we do docker ps, we can see Mongo here. The name is Mongo. We can do docker exec-it mongo bin bash. And this is bash. This is our shell, but we're running it on our container. So we'll join the container. So we're in the root folder of the whole container, and we can do cat /etc /mongo conf.original. All right, well, okay. So there's a whole lot of stuff in here. I mean, we can search through it for, there's DB path says var lib MongoDB. So the internet was wrong. It looks like the path is different. And let's check ls/var lib Mongo doesn't appear to exist. So maybe the internet is right and this configuration was wrong. Hang on, why are we not seeing, let's see, mongo.d.conf. So cat is a utility that prints out what's inside a file. So that's what I'm doing here, is just looking into the file really quickly without having to open it or anything. You can just print out what is in that file. But we don't seem to have that file. And let's see, DataDB. I mean, it really does look like it's using this. We can do ls-f DataDB, or sorry, -l. So -f will show hidden files. Files that start with a dot are hidden. ls-l will list with a bunch of statistics. We can see, what is this top? Is this modified? We can see that, you know, something is being modified today at least. So I think it's safe to assume that this is actually where the data is. Okay, so let's do the same thing that we did with Postgres, where we say, see, when you run Docker, you do -v, and this says a folder outside the container should be linked or have the same contents. So when you save a file inside the folder, inside the container, you see it in the folder outside on this half. And when you do the reverse, you do the reverse. So this just means it's going to go on a folder outside on my computer. And then when I restart the Docker or whatever, that folder still stays there. That means we'll keep our data. So I'm going to say home Docker volumes Mongo, and then inside the container, we're going to link it to /data/db. Is that what it was? /data/db. Yeah. Okay. And then instead of Postgres, we're not running the Postgres image that we downloaded. We're running the Mongo image. I think that's, yeah. So that's our full command. The one thing we need to do is take this, or actually make this folder on our file system, and then it will, because I don't know if it will be okay with it not existing. Oh, let's try it. Let's see. Exit Docker stop Mongo. Okay. And then let's do cd docker scripts. And we can do /mongo. I forgot to do one thing here. So in order to, if we do another ls-l, oh no. If we do another ls-l, we're going to see the files, and this row, this column over here will tell us things about the files. So R means read, W means write, and there would be an X here if you could execute them. So we have not said these files are executable yet. So even though they have a script in them, even though they have this thing at the top, you can't just do / and then it won't be allowed to run because the permission is not there on the actual file. We could still do bin bash and then Mongo start. That will work because this is executable and we're executing the file, right? So that worked fine. Let's stop again. And apparently, I mean, maybe our folder is fine. We don't even need to create it, which would be cool. But if we do chmod, there's a command called chmod, and you can do +x, and you give it a file to work on. I could type Mongo start there, but I think you can do *. And if we do ls-l again, see how all of them have the X there. So X, X, everybody can execute. So the first 3 group is what the owner of the file. So there's 3 levels of permission. The first one is the owner of the file. The second group is the group of the owner. So this is the owner. It's my username. This is the group, and this is everybody else or anybody. So basically, anyone in the group can execute, anyone else can execute, but only the owner, my user, can modify these files. So if we run again, Mongo start, we'll get our container running, and it seems to work. And if we do ls $home, I'm just copying up here, Docker volumes Mongo, it exists, and it actually created it to link it into the container. So we didn't even need to create the folder. I remember when we had to make this folder for Postgres, we actually did not need to make it, which is nice. Okay, so we have a Mongo start script, and you can see Mongo is now running. Come on, I want it all on one line. No. Yeah, that's nice. Okay. So now we can just do the same exact thing with these other 2 scripts. So we add new file, Mongo stop, and I'll paste in from Postgres stop. And this will be Mongo name, and that's it. And then join will be the same exact thing with Mongo name. So you really could make a script that's like, does all of this. So it could be like starter script -- Mongo or whatever, and it would read the properties that you pass into the script and do one or the other thing. But for right now, let's just keep it very straightforward. So we're going to make some copies of largely the same thing with just Postgres name and Mongo name for these other 2. Okay, so before I forget, we have to do the same thing. I'm going to go up to chmod plus x star because we have two new files. And if we did an ls-l, see these two new ones don't have the x's there. So we wouldn't be able to run them the same way. So we need to do that same thing. Now plus x means add the x. You can do this with like numbers, and it's a scheme with numbers. And if you haven't learned this already, maybe we'll go over this in the sort of operations and server administrating week in a little bit, but plus x means add the x to everything. So we'll do the same thing. And now we see they both have the x's. And so we can do /Mongo join tab. And now we're in the Mongo container. And we can do Postgres join and everything. So I'm actually going to remove this folder just so it's not confusing, and keep this folder. Kudos, thank you, Alice, again for originally setting those up, because that's very nice. But we'll just have this folder with 7 scripts now, and we can start or stop either Mongo or Postgres. Move to general scripts folder. Okay, I'll pull and push. Uh-oh. I did do pull. Push. Okay. All right. So now, yeah, we've an easy way to start Mongo to join the Mongo container. Let's try a little bit of Mongo. And that is done by doing /Mongo join. And now that we're in the Mongo container, this is already running our like Mongo database, just like the Postgres container is running our Postgres database. And just like the Postgres container where we do PSQL -u Postgres, that will start up a shell into the Postgres container. We can do the same with Mongo. So the Mongo shell is just called Mongo. And see, there's this warning: access control is not enabled for the database. Read and write access is unrestricted. So there's like no password or user. And that's been that's been a scandal or whatever. And they're like, they want it to be easy to use. But yeah, you have to actually, somehow make it so people can't, delete all your data or steal all your data. By running Mongo without any changes on the public internet. That's a bad idea. Okay, so we can do db, and that's got all our stuff. db dot, I don't know what test actually means, but test.xyz. So each thing inside db is what's called a collection, and then you can do db dot, let's call it users, or sandbox. Let's call it a sandbox collection.find. And this returns nothing because there's nothing in there. And you can just do whatever you want. Assume that it exists because it's all JavaScript. It's all very free form. There's no hard schema. You don't have to say create table first, or any of the stuff we had to do to set up Postgres. Obviously, the flip side, like I said on Thursday, is it doesn't really provide a lot of guarantees about the shape of your data or the consistency, but it's a lot quicker to like add and write and read data because of that. So if we do db.sandbox.insert1, is that a thing? I might have that wrong. Name is something, and we just put like an object in here, a JavaScript looking object, and we get back acknowledged true and the inserted ID. So it's going to generate like a totally unique ID for everything we add. So this document has an ID, and we can do db.sandbox.find again, and we'll see our one object. And if you look, it's added the ID to here. Now this is a hash, right? This is a long, just kind of very random string. There's no order to it. There's no, if we add another, one, oh, never mind. They are not randomly ordered hashes. It appears that they are actually sequential by default, which is interesting. So that does mean we should be able to order them by the when they were inserted very easily, because that's it's assigning IDs that way by default. Okay, so we can find, again, we have our two objects. We can do db.sandbox.find and give it the name that we're looking for in an object. And I guess it doesn't care about whether it's single or double quotes, just like JavaScript. But see, that gives us back the one that has that name. So it's very very easy to get up and running, and these objects can contain whatever you want, and they don't have to contain the same thing. So I can say this one has a number, and if we do find, oh, I tried find number that, and that of course doesn't exist. So I need to do insert one, number 1, 2, 3, and that is acknowledged, and it's got the next ID. But if we do find now, we see, well, this document has name ASDF. This document has this name. This document doesn't have a name at all. So you have to sort of watch out for whether your documents are consistent or not. You could read a document and then expect to see a certain set of columns and use them for logic or whatever. And in some cases, the document might not have that data. If you make a column in SQL and say it's not nullable, there's no way you'll ever read data from a row out of one of those tables, and it won't have that value. So that's what I mean. It's much more free form, and it does not provide the same guarantees, but you don't need to do all the setup because of that. So I think the approach that you generally want to take, rather than do this kind of direct reading and writing all the time, at least from the application, is use something like Mongoose, because then Mongoose will let you sort of define this is a user type and this is a message type, and it will sort of, you can reasonably expect when you load something from the user model, it'll have fields. Now, if you change your models to have different fields, and then you still have to figure out a way to migrate the data that already exists. If you've already made some users and now you add a birthday field to every user, the ones that are already in there, need to be updated in order to have the same birthday, or you have to not assume that birthday is on every field, so that it doesn't totally eliminate that. But for prototyping and for if you're going to tear down your database or clear it out every time you have a new model, at least or you're going to go, and update everything. It's not much of a problem. So it's very similar to the problem with Sequelize when we have that sync function that wipes out all the data. Easiest way to make sure everything's consistent is just delete the tables and recreate the tables. And better ORMs that are in SQL, there is a new one sort of for TypeScript, which they claim to do this, and I think it's pretty new, but it's called Type ORM, and I'm kind of interested by that. But then there's also ones for Rails and Django, and a lot of those out of the box ones. When you change something, it actually will figure out and write for you how to alter the table. So it's full SQL with the full table, but it actually builds for you the migration that adds the column and whatever. And you still have to think about, if you're adding a column that's not nullable, or if you're adding, or if you're making a column not nullable that used to be nullable, you need to know what to do, to add the data that's missing, because some rows will already be in there and they'll have no value in that one column, and they need one. So you need to either provide a default or provide some kind of way for it to determine what to put there if you're doing that. So it doesn't solve everything, but it's it's somewhat a little bit more manageable for like transitioning your data model than I guess either of these two that we've looked at. Okay. So anyways, so that's the Mongo shell. We can exit that with the Control-C and then exit by typing exit. That's now we're out of the Docker container. Okay, so I'm gonna go out of this Docker scripts folder, and I'm gonna say mkdir, which is make directory, and the directory will be chat room ODM. So remember, we have ORM, which is object relational mapper, which is like relation SQL tables mapped to JavaScript objects. That's Sequelize. And then we'll say chat room ODM. It'll be very similar, but I don't want to, I want to just have both of them available there. And ODM is object document mapper, of course. So that refers to like Mongo documents, and we're going to use Mongoose, which is the sort of mainstream ODM for Mongo. Okay, so we make directory here. We do cd chat room ODM, and the first thing we can do is npm init, and this sets up our file so we have our package JSON and everything. And you can just follow all the prompts. If you care about the adding the Git repository, there is no special repository. This is a license, which means I think anybody can use it for anything. They can sort of do whatever they want with the code. And is it okay? Yes. Okay, so if we do ls, we now have the package.json, and I'll go back to the folder on the bar here. So we have our package.json, and we can start adding a couple dependencies. So let's just take a look at our ORM one and figure out what's, our dependencies are express, cores, body parser. These ones we're not using, but remember we were using them to do some validation. What happened to all that validation stuff? Oh, it's in the models folder, right? So we're actually doing the validation and importing Moment here and actually using it, but we're not using Moment for anything actually we need it for. And it's dim, see, it's sort of grayed out here along with FS. We're not using either one of these. So let's install Express, cores, body parser, And instead of sequelize, we'll install Mongo. Okay, so we're in the ODM folder, the new one, and we can then do npm install -- save, and they are express, cores, body parser, and mongoose. So this is like the sequelize for Mongo. And we have our node modules in this new folder. So we're all good with the node, the installing the npm stuff. Here's another command line command we can do. We can do touch server.js, and what all that will do is make a file at where we say. So it's just an easy command, and now we have a server.js file. So we have empty server file and our node modules installed. Let's copy a bunch of stuff from the beginning of this because we need to require all of these. We don't need to require sequelize or this db config, but we need these three. And then we'll say const mongoose equals require mongoose. And I'm going to look at the docs for this. So we can get quite a lot right from the just the quick start example here. This is going to work because we have our Docker container running, and its port inside the container is connected to the port outside. So we should be able to get it at localhost 27017. And test, I guess, is like the database. So there's databases or collections or whatever they are inside MongoDB, and we just select the one we want. Okay, so we connect Mongoose, and then we have models. And we just define them like this. So rather than having this demo model, of course, we're going to have the user model. So we'll do const user equals mongoose.model. And I guess the name is capital user. I hope that doesn't matter as much as it does in Postgres with the capital. You have to put double quotes around it because it starts with a capital letter. That's very frustrating. But anyway, we'll say the user model has a name. And this here is just a JavaScript like type. So it's like capital S string is just a thing in JavaScript. And I think so it's, we do name string, we do we don't need to do ID. It's just like sequelize. It'll figure out the ID for us. Do email, and that's another string. And we'll do birthday, and that could be a date actually. And then we'll do I don't know what else. State, we had state of residence, and that's another string. A lot of strings. Email is a string, and let's just take a look at validation here, and we can start, we can start building out our fields in almost the same way as you do in Sequelize, where instead of just string here, we can put a whole object and it's type string. And this required true actually means pretty much the same as not null. So as long as you build this into your model, it's going to give you some assurances that the data you add after that point always has that. So I'm not sure if they have the is email or anything fancy like that, but they have required. So we'll say email is at the top here and it's required. So instead of just string, we'll make an object. It'll be type string required true. And then I'm not sure if they have the email validator. So if you make it a number, you can say min and max, and it looks like you can also give it the message, the actual error message when it does not validate this particular rule. It looks like you can make custom functions that validate as well. So we could find a function to check that email exists, and that's harder than you'd think. Emails can be many, many different surprising things, and fully validating that something is an email is not easy. But we can just get something from Stack Overflow that works most of the time just for this demonstration, and put it in a function like this. This is cool though. Like you can say that this field is not nullable, or this field cannot be empty only when a different field has a certain value. So this refers to this. And that's actually something that's not nearly as easy to do in SQL is make constraints that are based on other values in the table. Okay, so custom validators. So you can add as many some validators in here, and I guess it looks like this: validate, validator, and then the message. And see, they're checking for phone number, which is nice. Let's do the same thing. So validate, validator, this is the value. So this function will be passed the new value, and you're going to return true or false based on whether it is or not is not valid. And then you have a message, which is different. That's great. So this one is a function. This one is an arrow function shortcut. And that's probably because they want to be able to use this dot name or this dot birthday or whatever it is in here and have that actually work. If I had to guess. So they're two different kinds of functions, syntax right next to each other, for actually, I think, a legitimate reason. Okay, so we do return, let's say, let's just look for like email or regex. And if you search something like this, how to validate an email address using a regular expression, the discussion is like, basically, you really can't. It's obscure. The properly doing it says is inefficient and obscure because it's incredibly long. Oh, for current specification for email addresses, this. Oh. Well, here it is. That's a nice regex. Look at that. Here's a diagram of a finite state machine for the above regular expression, which is more clear than the regular expression itself. Oh, you think? I know exactly what this is doing right away. But look, so this regular expression actually is represented by this gigantic flowchart state machine thing. So it is to follow. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's crazy. Anyway, let's see if this actually works. Copy this whole thing. It's a little crazy, but we pasted between the forward slashes, which is how you do regular expression. And that's extremely long. And we'll say is not a valid email. Okay, so name, birthday, state, none of those are required. This one is has all of that. Okay, so there's our user model. And then we can do user dot, look at this. VS Code knows what it is. Hooray. Look, we've installed Mongoose and it actually can tell us all of the methods we can run right here. Terrific. That's so refreshing. I don't think it did that for Sequelize. But we can do .create and it will even tell us you give it an array of what you want and it returns a promise. So it is asynchronous. So let's say user.create and give it an object here and it'll say email. And this will be an invalid email. And it will have nothing else. Then and we'll say value or document, whatever we want to call it. I don't want to use document because that's a browser word. I'll call it value. Console.log value. And we can't use a wait here, unfortunately, because we're not inside an async function. We're just in the script. So unless you're inside the async function, if you do a wait here, it won't like it. Okay, so we do .then and we'll do .catch error console error. So console.error is like console.log, but it's a special kind of log that shows up as an error. Okay, so now let's try to run it. Okay, we got our error. And we can see invalid email is not a valid email. Well, that's pretty much true. Let's try a valid one and see if this actually works. Test at website.com. That one works. So our crazy long email validating regular expression actually kind of works. And I'm not going to touch this thing except to add a comment. Like if there's something crazy weird like this in your code that you think is just going to surprise and disturb someone who comes by and looks at it and they're like, what the heck is all this? That's a good signal to yourself that you should add a comment there, like saying, this is super weird, because it sort of tells somebody who comes to it and looks at it later, like their reaction is like, what the heck is this? It gives them immediately something to say like, oh, this is, somebody else knows that this is super weird and it's still here and it's got the comment. So they're not going to mess with it, or they're going to know, either not to mess with it or like that when they do mess with it, they should be very aware of like what it's for. So we'll I'll grab this. What a crazy answer. This is like extremely thorough. So we'll say email validation regex from here. I'll call it very long email validation regex, just because. Okay, so our validator appears to work fine, and there's our user model. And oh, and let's just check, let's say we make a user with no email. Let's see what happens there. We'll say path email is required. So it's checking that we do have an email and that it is an email address. And I think we're all set. Okay, so now we can make the message model. Const message equals mongoose dot model message, and then the schema is the object that describes, it's this object that describes all the fields. So message has user, and this here is like a foreign key, right? So this is in a SQL table. This is like, you know, you add the constraint or whatever, and we have to do that thing in Sequelize, if you remember, where we never found a better way than in our models folder, adding this user ID, which has this references thing. And it'll actually be very similar in the Mongo thing. I think I have it, one of these tabs. Okay, so there's a thing called ref, and you do type schema.types.object ID, and schema is mongoose.schema. So let's try that out. Oh, and look, they've also done a thing here where you can wrap you could wrap the string or this whole object here in square brackets, and this is an easy way to say it has many of them. So instead of you know, saying always it has to reference something and do a has many that way, if it's just a list, if it's just an array of, you know, strings or numbers or something, and there's many of them, but you don't want to make a whole table for it, you can just actually do, it's as easy as that. I would say definitely be careful when you think, oh, I can just make a list of this nested in here. I mean, that is what document databases are good at, but in general, when you're modeling your data and you're going to all the trouble of finding the relationships and the foreign keys and everything, if you nest everything in one model, then it might not work at all when you try to do a different pattern of access. If you try to get just a group of those nested things, then all of a sudden you have to go to that the one model and look at all the children, and it can become very inefficient at scale because they're not all in their own, you know, sort of normalized place, which is a flat table. They're all nested in various other models. So anyway, yeah, so the array is good for it's good for in this case, this looks like a many to many because there is actually many foreign keys, right? This is basically a foreign key to a different model. And because there's many keys, that means it's many to many. Now, if there's one key here, it's one to many because many of these things, again, can refer to the same of these things. but each one refers to only one. So it's one to many. So that's pretty interesting. This is how you would easily do a many to many in Mongo without anything in the middle. You just say, well, it's a foreign key, but it's actually an array of them. So it's many to many. But it lives on this side, right? It's a little one side. It's a little weird because it's like all of the key lives in this model, not this model. This model just is referred to by this array foreign key, array of foreign keys, whatever it is. Okay, but anyway, we need to do mongoose.schema.types. Oh, and it knows so much about Mongoose. This is a nice thing about using sort of a mainstream library is this VS Code knows all about it. The types are pretty good. Okay, so we have object ID, there it is. And we'll say, put this whole thing in an object and say type is that. And then we say, what was it? Ref. Ref is user. And what else? And it's a single, it's not an array of users, right? If we said users and we had it would be many users related to many messages. Okay. And let's say required true on this, just because we don't want there to be messages with no users associated with them. So we have user, and it references our other model. So it's effectively a single foreign key. And then we have text, which is a string. And I guess it should be required. So we'll say this, type string, required true. Okay. So if we try this is not going to work, but let's say we do message.create. And inside here, we're going to have the user and the text. So user will be, how do we know, how do we find the user for this? I wonder. Now you could probably put the ID once you find it, but we need to get the ID. What if we did user dot find by ID? Oh, not find by ID, just find. And we'll say email is test@website.com because we already made this user, and then we'll do ._ID because that's the ID that it actually created. So we might just be able to do this, user.find this, because it's a reference. Let's see what happens. And then we do text, and this will be, hello, this is a message. And let's see what happens. Message validation failed. So it's possible that our user has to be something else. That's a long error. Cast to object ID failed for value query. Okay. So let's try it with underscore ID. And I'm not sure if this is going to work either because this might be an array. Another error. Path user is required. So what happened here is this thing, this find, I believe, returns an array of every user that matches or something usable as an array. And we need to put a 0 to get the pull the first one out. Is there a find one? There is find one. So maybe find one will work instead of having to say the first thing in the array. Nope. User is required. Let's oh, these are all asynchronous. Right. Okay. So we need to do user.find one. Actually, let's start using an async function because this is getting annoying. Async function do stuff. And we'll say const user, lowercase user equals user model dot find one, and the email is here. And we're going to await that. And we'll say const message equals await message dot create. This will be user equals user, or sorry, user colon user. And text is hello, this is a message. Or actually, why don't we just say send message? And we'll say email, comma, text. So we'll say the person who's supposed to send the message will send text, and we'll substitute in email and text. Okay, so we'll return the message from this function. So now we can actually say send message with the email and with test message or whatever. That should be lowercase. Okay. And we can't do await out here, I don't think. So we need to put our dot thens, which is just the same, has the same result. Oh, but also let's console.log the user. That worked fine. Okay, so it wasn't broken at all. We just had to await it. So when we do find one, we don't get back the user object, we get the promise for it. So unless we await it or do a dot then, we don't actually have the user, so it had no ID. But once you have the user, you don't need to do user dot underscore ID. You can just say that's the user. And we can do the shortcut to say just user comma text, because it's user colon user text colon text. And rather than being redundant, newer JavaScript lets you just do that. And the same thing here. Okay. So I wonder, let's just check real quick. We really can't do await this. Because it would be nice if you could just do it, but yeah, it doesn't like await because it's not in an async function. Okay, so all of this is working. We have our foreign key. We have our, this one's required if we didn't include the user. And we try this again, we'll see a validation error because user is required, of course. I think we're now ready to add these to our endpoints, but first I want to make some coffee. Take a break, like 10 minutes. So post up any questions. Hope you're having a good morning. Post any questions in the channel and we'll finish this up when I get back. And then we can look a little bit at the index thing we were looking at on Thursday and just try a couple of Postgres indexes. And I think that'll do it for today. All right, see you in a bit. Yeah.
Plug in your laptop. Might be when you come back, it's shut down.
Thank you. I will grab the cord. Good idea.
Bye.
Charging. All right. I think we can continue. All right. So we have our two models and they work. We haven't done anything with Express yet. So let's get that into here. It's pretty much the same kind of thing. We have these three. And then we have all of the endpoints. I'm just going to copy the entire thing. And then we start it up. So these we don't have to touch them. This function send message will sort of rewrite it into here. But down here, instead of await user.findAll, we're going to say user.find, which is the same kind of thing. Now we can filter it, of course, by like email matching something, but this is all users, so we'll just find all of them. This is, I believe, exactly the same. We're going to pass it all the fields in the request body. Messages will be find. And messages create here. These two, not relevant. And I'm not sure if they're in Mongo or Mongoose, if there are like model methods. Or, I mean, I guess the models are JavaScript objects, so you can just kind of like, let's see. Yeah, it's probably you add it to the model prototype. We'll try that out in a little bit. Okay. So that was pretty easy. And instead of this, let's just comment out or delete this thing. And this we're not going to use yet, but if you run the server is running. I'm going to go to here and do my local tunnel just in case anyone wants to try it. Port 8081, subdomain. And if we go to Postman, our same endpoint should work the same way. Postman is a bit of a hefty program, it appears. Okay. So if we get the users, we see the users. Now there's a little bit different content here. The ID is this underscore ID. And we have the email, and we have so the other fields that are in there, like we don't see birthday, we don't see state at all, because we never set them. And Mongo doesn't, like, because they're not required, Mongo is like, okay, I'll save that document, and that document does not have keys for birthday or state. Now you can still do, in JavaScript, you can still do, user.birthday if you want, and it's going to work, but it's going to give you undefined because it's not defined on that object. So just something to be aware of. You're not going to see birthday null automatically. We can say, like, users, instead of this here being what we send back, we can say users.map, and then user arrow, do a parentheses and then a curly brace, because this will be return an object. You can't just do curly brace because it'll think, oh, that's the body of your function. But if you put parentheses around it, it'll be like, okay, you're returning a value, and the value is an object, and it'll know, oh, the braces are for an object. So you have to do that in order to just return an object right away. Okay, so we can say ID user._ID. So why not just show that? Email user.email. Name user.name. Birthday user.birthday. And state user.state. Okay, so this will then return a format. Always return this format to the front end. And this is a little easier to do once you're in a framework like Max will show you. And that's because, like, you won't have to, say, oh, I'd like to translate everything that I send to the client with a special map. But in our case, this is a pretty easy way to just say, if you save this, oh, I need node mon server so that it actually reloads. This is a pretty good way to say we'll always return these fields, and we'll translate the underscore to not need it, and these will be undefined or null, but we'll see them. No, we won't. Oh, because they're undefined. Okay. That's great. I feel like they should show up but be null, but the ID doesn't have the underscore. We can do this or null, but that's I don't really like that. At least they'll show up now. Okay, so we get our users, and that's looking pretty good. If we post user, this is going to work fine, but we could make sure, like, we don't get the guarantee that the name, birthday, and state are set to something, null or whatever. And we can either do that when we're writing, so we could do request.body.name, so like name, request.body.name or null. In which case the objects will get written into Mongo with nulls there, and then you wouldn't need to do this, you'd see them. Or we can just do it on the read side. Why don't we do that, actually? So we'll do it on the right side because we want our data in Mongo to be pretty good. And I'm not sure if there's a way to tell Mongo this has to be so, you know, it has to be present, but it could be null. Or if it's not present, don't put undefined in there, put null in there. They're different things, and it's kind of annoying in this case. So what we'll do here is, rather than have this map to all of these, we can just say ID with no underscore is the user ID with underscore, and then we can do ... user. And this is a spread operator. I'm not sure if this was covered very much, but this is going to take all of the properties inside the user and spread them out. Actually, no, now if we do this, we're going to see ID with no underscore and ID with the underscore. So maybe, I think. Let's check. Whoa, okay, that's not good, because we got back all kinds of internal Mongo stuff. I probably shouldn't have messed with that. So I think it's like Mongoose is like doing some magic stuff where the actual fields are somewhere, but if you do ... you get some weird stuff. So let's not even bother with that. Whoops. Okay, but let's get rid of the nulls here. And then we can write them in when we're writing them. So now this one doesn't matter, because if it's not there, Mongo is going to complain. It's not going to like it. Or Mongoose will complain, right? We have birthday. And we have state. So this will write something. It'll write nulls in. And this is kind of like what I don't like about the freeform Mongo document is it's sort of awkward to say, I want to guarantee that like the shape of this data matches something, but these are nullable. It says, well, they're just undefined. And I wonder, can we just put a default on the model? Maybe that's the right way to go. Come on, get out of the way. Yeah, this is probably what we want. Just make the default null in one place, and then we don't have to do anything special. So let's go up to the model. Let's say here, type string, default null. And this one will be type date, default null. Type string, default null. And if we get, we're still going to see, oh, I broke the tunnel. Whoops. We're still going to see, well, these nulls. Why are we going to see? Because I think we're still writing them. No? I guess those defaults worked on read. And we don't have to do any of this. We can just say request.body. and we'll get our defaults. So that's pretty nice. Now we still need to do something about this if we want the ID to not have an underscore. So I'm going to leave that one in just because, but if you don't mind it having an underscore, then you could just do users is users. You don't have to translate it into anything. Okay, so we have our user. We can, let's see if we can post a user. Oh, I have another tab. And favorite color is probably going to ignore. Or it might just save it. It might just be like, we'll let you save the entire everything, you know? So, oh no, we have I'm curious, what do we get? Because we have Mongoose saying a model exists and there's no field called favorite color on the model. So maybe, yeah, okay, good. So we get back our user here and it still has the underscore ID on the way back, which is kind of weird. But if we get users now, we'll see both of them. And neither one has a favorite color. This one has the birthday because we set it. That's it. And it works fine. The date, it had no problem with this format date. So that's nice. Here, you know, I kind of wish there was a better way to make it use return like an actual friendly looking no underscore ID in this thing, which is kind of annoying. But obviously what you can do is send, instead of the user, you send, you know, we'll just do it. Might as well. ID, name, and we're typing a whole lot of stuff over and over. I don't know about this. I feel like let's make a function which is called function serialize user. And this is going to take the Mongo version and it's going to give us back this. So it's really just this whole function that we're mapping. We have user here, we'll do return this. Serialize a user to make it nice and friendly looking in the API. So we have serialize user that will always work the same way. Now we could add our nulls here just to be super sure that, you know, even if the model wasn't doing it, we would still get our nulls, but might as well just let the model handle that part. And we'll say users.map serialize user, because that's our function. And instead of user here, we'll say serialize. Well, I'm like not spelling well today. Serialize user, user. No. What was it? Yeah, it's user. We made it right here. Okay. No semicolon. Okay, so we serialize on both halves and we should have a nice format. Now, because we're you never tell the API what ID should be. It assigns the ID automatically. We don't need to do the reverse. We don't need to convert like the post request parameters to like the internal fields in Mongo, because they will all match. And we might have to do that, you know, for a different reason, or in the future, you know, convert this stuff to what it sends to Mongo. So there might be two halves to that. But let's try, oh, we don't have unique. So I'll bet I can make the same email again. We should add that unique in there. So there's this, and we'll see 2 users with the same email. 3 of them actually. Well, that's not gonna be good if we still keep having this problem. But anyway, we're getting nice friendly responses back. That's good. Let's just finish up with a message, do the same thing. So we'll say serialized message in the same way. And this is just an ID and a user. And this will be message.user.email. How about that? Let's try that. And text message.text. We could say email, how it depends on what you want to display to clients of your API. And I think like allowing them to use the email might work, or actually probably a better convention is just user ID, because someone could change their email and then all those keys are invalid. So you might want to just say user.id. And let's try when we get or send messages, we'll do the same thing. So messages.map serialize message. And then here, user. Now, I'm not sure if actually, how do we tell it which user to create? Let's figure this out. Let's try await user dot find one, or find by ID. Is that right? Yeah. So we just await that right here and we get our user. That seems like a decent way to do it. And then we serialize, and then we do serialize message with the message here. Now I'm also going to remove the status OKs and this whole wrapping object because it's just more confusing, and I think we should also let's do, something I totally forgot is to send the appropriate status codes, the HTTP codes, like a 400 or a 500. I mean, it's not really that subject, and Max will get into this. So perhaps actually, let's just leave it. Let's leave it alone. So status, okay, user, serialized user. And the same with message. And when we list, we are mapping. So the whole array, everything in the array will get sent into serialized message, and then we'll get an array back of serialized messages. Okay, there's our message. We got user ID, and this is the message ID. So this seems to be working. For get, that's great. And you can, that's pretty cool. You can do, where is it? Message.user, and that actually gives you the user record. So it's a way to follow the foreign key to the user and actually get that user. And then we can say their ID, just that easy. Okay. And then let's try creating a message and see if this thing works. So we'll see, okay, this user, let's copy that ID. Oh, and we're using the other convention with user capital I. I'm getting confused here. So serialized message should really go like that. Yes, no underscores. Okay, so but any case, we copy that, it'll show up as user ID now, like that. And if we post, we should say user ID is this, and these are now strings, so these are not numbers like they were in Postgres. And that worked fine. Okay, and let's see if we get the new message with the new user. It worked just fine. So that's pretty cool. You can just await the user here and then drop them right in here, and it all works. Okay, I think the last thing let's do with our endpoints here is let's move the models out into their own files and import them, and that'll be it. So we can do the same kind of setup where the sequelized CLI setup for us, where there's a models folder. Now we're not going to make a migrations folder and or have it scaffolded automatically, but we can easily just move this into its own, these into their own files, because then we have a nice, you know, these might get big, we might add functions, and let's have each one in its own file because they're just easier to look at by themselves. So I'll cut that out of there and say user.js. And we'll say module.exports equals user. So we might have to require Mongoose in this thing. And in each of these files, so we'll need to require Mongoose, we'll define the model and then export it. And we'll do this for both user and message. Okay, and we do module.exports equals message. So now we have our two models in their own folders, and we can just import them right into here. So we can say const user equals require / models user, and const message equals require models message. Oh, and it figured out these are real folders. Okay, so this should restart and work the same as long as I didn't mess anything up. Beautiful. All right, we are all set. So let's try one more thing. Let's try adding the function on the user. Let's get rid of this. Let's try to add a model method like we did with Sequelize, and this will let us make the send message a little bit more friendly. So we will have, we can just call a method on this user rather than do all of this around it. So let's say that we have user.prototype.send message. And this is going to be a function. It takes the text of the message. And because we have function format, the this should refer to the one user instance. And we should be able to say message dot, whoops, create. Now we need to require message, right? Because we don't have any reference to it in this module. So we need to say const message equals require message. Oh, /message, because we're in the same folder as it, and it's not an NPM package, it's one of our own modules. So we require message, we'll say message.create, and this is going to be, you can create an array of message, I guess, but I think we'll just create one, and it'll be user this text. So the text you send, and then this will always be the user that is attached to that message. So if we go back to our server, now when we post a message, rather than just manually calling this message.create, we could say const user equals this part. And then we do user.send message. And this is request body text. And this is const message equals await this. And if we go check this out, we probably want to return this because otherwise we won't be able to await it from outside of it. So we have a send message prototype on the prototype of the user, meaning user should be able to send message like this. We get users. We could say let's say this first user will create a message. And it works fine. So yeah, so we have a way for us to have models perform actions just like they do in Sequelize. We have the same option, and it's very similar. Same, I think it's identical actually. So add a model method for each that any user can call. And I'll add an example. Const user equals await user dot find. Const message equals await user dot send message hello. Okay. So I think that'll do it for our server. We have a very similar kind of outcome. We're just using the Mongoose library. We also have nice models that are in their own dedicated place. We don't have any migrations. You can kind of write whatever data you want, as you've seen. and change the models however you want, but you have to watch out for old data. And these serialized methods, maybe they should sort of gracefully understand, like if you have old messages that had no user, I don't know why, but you'd probably want to try catch here, or do something where you would handle when the user's not there, because it has to be compatible with both, or just wipe out your database and restart. So let's figure out real quick, how do you wipe out your database or sync your database? Computer's going very slow. Okay, anyway, in the meantime, while that's loading, I'm gonna check in this code. Mongoose, Mongo, ODM version of chat room app. Okay, so you call dot remove and you pass it the empty object, which will match any object. So you can just do node. You can say, oops, const. Nope, that's not what I wanted. I want to type down here. Okay. You'd say const user equals, or message at message equals require dot slash models message. And you can say message dot delete and give it the empty object. Nope. What is it? Remove. And you could do the same with users. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Anyway, you get the idea. You can remove the data that way. You probably could just, is there a command in Mongo shell? Yeah, okay. So you can do the same in Mongo shell. So we could say Control C, cd dot dot slash docker scripts, and we do dot slash join, Mongo join, and then we do Mongo, and then we do db dot test dot, what is it? Delete, what was it? Remove. db.test.remove. Remove needs a query. It's not. Oh, you have to pass it the empty document, just like this. Okay. Okay, well, it's all cleared out. So yeah, to clean up data, I mean, you either have to do that, or one other thing you can do is if you go to this Docker scripts and when you do Mongo start, you can just you can remove this line here. And if you do this, then it won't link to any folder in your local computer. And if you run the start and the stop script, if you run start, you'll get a brand new Mongo. So this line here is what sort of saves the data outside the container. And if you don't do that, every time you stop it, you'll get a brand new fresh Mongo. Okay, so that's sort of doing the parallel kind of thing with Mongo and Mongoose. Is there do either of you questions about any of that you want to go into more detail about, or should we do a little database index? I've got a little bit more on just, trying a couple Postgres indexes, but they're not really relevant to capstones or anything. It's just from Thursday, we tried to show the database using an index, and it just was like, I don't need to use the index because there weren't enough rows. If we add enough rows, we can see that. So I was thinking we could just do that. Anything else?
Did you create a administrator user, Gus?
For what?
For the database? No,
this is just brand new, fresh Mongo Docker container. It has no user accounts or it has no password on it. Okay. What is yours saying something else?
No, I was wondering how you create an administrator user for the database.
Okay. I don't know, but let's see. If we run Mongo, it says access control is not enabled, read and write access is unrestricted. It doesn't tell you how to. So we will search it. Add password. I don't know if it's an administrator account. Enable access control. User administrator. Okay. So there's a db.create user. And if we go to here, is this a command? Oh, you can do use admin, which is, I guess, the administrator database in Mongo. And you can do db.create user. So, Max knows a lot more about Mongo than I do. He's used it more. Probably most of the instructors have used it more. So they'll definitely.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they'll definitely be more familiar with, setting this kind of thing up. But if we do create user, it says user, my admin, password. So this must be password. We'll make it CIC again. That is a very insecure password. And then roles is all of this, whatever that is. It says successfully added user. And then what's, okay, restart MongoDB instance with access control. Okay. So we're in a Docker container, so we're might have to get fancy to get it to run this rather than whatever the default is, or there might be just like a command line argument you can pass. There probably is. So Docker Mongo. So normally you'd have to run it, the program that's the Docker database with some commands. But it might be just easier. Or maybe it's not very good. Yeah, this is going to get fun because it's a Docker container. And
If not, we can wait next week until they will touch this subject.
okay. I mean, it looks like people are, have these concerns. Okay, yeah. So like they just don't document this very well, but there's Mongo initdb root username, Mongo initdb root password. So I think what we probably can do is add these to our Mongo start script. Sorry, Docker scripts. So remember the Postgres start script has these environment variables. This thing is a variable with a value that's inside the environment. And we've just found there's these special variables. I think if we set them, we will be able to do the same thing, I think. So we do -e, this equals root or admin or whatever. And then -e, the other one, and we'll make the password the same thing. Okay, so if we exit here, Docker ps /Mongo stop, and then what I'm going to do is rm-rf, or actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to try Mongo start. And then Mongo join. And we'll see Mongo. Aha. So it's not connecting, probably because of the password. So we say, instead of just Mongo, we can say this kind of thing. Like this. Mongo -u admin -p CIC. That doesn't work. well, I might be stumped here. Add address already in use. So it's crashing for some reason. Let's try Mongo stop. Docker PS. Mongo start. Mongo join. Oh. Mongo dash u admin. And all right, I don't really know.
Yes, don't worry. I can wait until next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure Max has used Mongo. I don't know if he's used it with the Docker container, but he can show you how to install it outside of Docker too. We're using Docker because it's it's easy to deploy it, and it's also basically the same kind of thing as Postgres. It was very quick to go from one to the other. But yeah, I mean, I think I'll do a little research, and if I find a good like tutorial or method for it, I'll post something up in the channel. Otherwise, Max will know one or both of those, you know, how to do it in Docker or outside of Docker. At least you know that.
That sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Do you want to do any tinkering with Postgres index before we break, or it's not really, you know, relevant. It's just kind of like a demonstration that didn't work on Thursday. So if you're interested, we can check that out. Otherwise, I think that's it for today, unless you have any other questions. Karen?
Hi guys. My question was, can you like use Insomnia? I know you talked about it a little bit in class, and we've been the Postman a lot, but I'd kind of like to see how the Insomnia works. It looked
okay.
Kind of interesting to me.
Okay, cool. I use Insomnia more just because it's a little bit generally seems like newer and a little more efficient and better. So you have a workspace up here, and I have one called Careers in Code, and you can click up here and do create workspace. So I'll say demo workspace, and a workspace is just like a big folder full of requests, right? So you get a workspace here, and it has nothing in it, no environment. Now you can go to environment here and say manage environments. And this will let you set like variables if you want to switch between development and production. I don't want to get into all of that because we didn't do that in Postman. And it's the potential to be a little bit confusing. But you click here at this plus and do plus new request or new folder. So you can make a folder, or you can just add requests, and we'll call this one get users. And actually you don't need the get right there. I'll call it load all users, and the method is get. we do create, and it puts it right here. So you have your list will go down this side, and we can say HTTPS so, and then you send it here. And I think my tunnel's, no, I guess the server's not running. Yeah. So we'll do node mon server. And if our local tunnel didn't crash, we can now go to this. Oh, it finished. Command find requires authentication. Oh boy. So we are, it is properly authorized now, but we've just broken it. So let's see, does Mongoose, actually that would be nice if Mongoose can set up, then we figured out authentication. Okay, so it's just in the thing. Username, password, cool. So what I'm gonna do here is, sorry, this is a bit of an aside. But when we say connect to Mongo or Mongoose, we do username, which is admin, and then password CIC at this. Now I'm gonna put a comment here that says, don't ever put your production username password in source code. There's a better way to do this. In production, you don't want this checked into GitHub basically, because this is going to be saved on GitHub, and then anybody who can access your code, especially if it's open source, would be able to see the password, right? I mean, the whole point of the password is it's secret. So in production, you're going to want to build this with other environment variables, right? So you do the same kind of thing that we're doing with running Docker. We'll make this a little bit const Mongo user is admin, and const Mongo password is CIC. So we'll put a comment here that says, you know, load these from environment variables once you're. So yeah, they shouldn't be just saved as strings like in your file. That's not good. But what we can do now is just quickly do it, get it ready, and you can do a backtick string here with the backticks, and then substitute them in like this. And then you could do the same with host and port. But all you'd have to do is read these from an environment variable instead. So there's os.environ in Node. We'll get into this in deployment when we talk about deployment and stuff. Okay, failed to connect to server. Authentication failed. Ah, crap. Well, this is going to be fun. I'll try to fix this for another couple minutes, but we're down a rabbit hole now. Hmm. Yeah, all right. Well, this is fun. Let's try rmrf. Be careful of this. Tilde slash Docker volumes Mongo. And then Docker stop Mongo. Do both. Docker. Oh, and then we do Docker scripts. Mongo start. And after all of this, it's of course not going to work, but nope. Failed to connect to server. Docker PS. So Docker PS, we can go to there, Docker, Docker exec. Now this is the same as the join script, but I just want to type it out. And if we do PS AUX, we can see all the running processes. So we have MongoDB, it's actually working. But oh, what the heck? It just start? Did it just start? Or am I like this printed different? Okay, let's see what happens if we try it again. Maybe it just took a long time to start up.
Well, 1600, that's 4 o'clock.
Yeah, well, so that's UTC. We're 4 hours behind that. Yeah. Okay, well, I've just pretty much broken everything now. Let's undo this Let's go back to here and undo all that nonsense about the password and everything. In any case, you know, it's something to set up once we do the setup and the deployment of it. That's when the password is going to matter. But if you're going to put it in your source code anyway, it's not that secret. So, you know. Okay. I think we'll need to restart Mongo. Or it just worked because I messed up something. Still unauthorized. Okay, we got to restart Mongo. And I'm going to do the clear out the whole volume. We'll, oh, we got to go Docker scripts /Mongo start. cd chat room odm node mon server.js. All right, well, I've totally broken everything, I guess. I can't even get it back. So this is a bit of a train wreck. If you want to just see, I'll just show you the things and then imagine they work, and I'll figure out what's going on at some point. But yeah, I don't know. I shouldn't mess too much with all this Mongo stuff without actually knowing what I'm doing. When it's the nice, happy path tutorials and demos, it all works very well. And then we tried some advanced things, and let's maybe ask Max for help with that, with that part. Anyway, okay, so we have the get and it breaks, and we would add a new request here. And we could say, create a user. And the URL
post, right? When you create it.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah. So you can go to here and then change this to post right up here. And it automatically, it saves immediately. So there's no like saving and loading of stuff really. It's just like you make a new thing in this list, and then whenever you change it, it's just updated. So it's generally good to, like, you could have one that's sort of a sandbox, like you can keep changing it, but then it's good to have a list of all the endpoints in your API, because then you can test them out. And you can start doing fancy things like embedding variables. So you could say, like, you know, server like this. And then you click on it and it's like, well, it doesn't exist. So if you go to your environment and add a server here, then it will stop breaking. And so you can use this to basically say production, development, and have the same endpoints. But when you switch to like, you know, when you add new environments, you can switch to like, you know, I'm in production now, or I'm local, and then all your endpoints are the same, but they substitute in the server from your environment. So that's what the environment is for. For right now, we'll just do list it out. The post is here to users, and then you can do your headers for your request. If you remember headers, auth is like for tokens. It has common token type auth, and then body has you click here and you can do JSON, and then you type your JSON. So this would be and then you send. So this is not going to work,
Right, because the server's not working.
right? But
this seems more, I mean, I guess I really didn't notice if you could do that with the Postman, but this seems like you could test everything before you want to deploy it out. And then even when it's deployed, you can still test it.
yep.
Okay.
I don't spend as much time setting up nice endpoints for like my work as I could or should, but some of my coworkers do, and they just give me, you can also export, I think you can like export this. Yeah. So you can just send someone a file for your API and they can pull it right in. And this will actually import exports from Postman too, or other formats. So this is a pretty darn good program. It has themes and stuff. That's pretty nice.
Okay, just because I think I might want to try this when I get closer to that step with my capstone versus Postman.
Yeah, I recommend this over Postman. I use it myself. It's generally a little cleaner and a little bit less of a heavyweight program that takes up a lot of resources, and it works very nicely. So
Okay.
and their business model of this is that this version of it is free forever. It's like Postman. You can buy like a license for a more advanced one where you can share like environment secrets and things like that. Upgrade to plus, So,
Right.
but the idea is that it's not a demo or anything. They're not going to take it away, so it's free. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could see if you were gonna, like, if you needed to share that kind of stuff with like people in your work that you work with, but for right now, I wouldn't need anything like that.
Yeah, and we don't pay for it at work either. I mean, we totally could, and it probably would be a good idea. Like it's a pretty solid product, so it would probably be a good idea eventually. But you don't have to. So
Okay. So when I get to that point with my capstone, I'll probably reach out to you about it again,
okay,
just to make sure. I have most of my, like, I guess you would say front end sort of coded out. I have to do like 12 pages and I have about 6 left. Linda helped me yesterday a lot with figuring out Bootstrap and everything. So
cool.
now I can,
Well, yeah,
because I think I'll probably get most of those done today. And if I can do that, then my next step is going to be starting to implement all of like the JavaScript and functions and getting my database set up and all that fun stuff.
cool. Yeah, that's gonna get fun. Yeah, I'm gonna set up a calendar just like Max has been doing. I think that's a great idea, and I'll put like slots where like I'm not busy after work or whatever, and might as well take advantage of that. And if you have any questions or if you want to just pair on something or whatever, I think that's a really nice. What he's got is a pretty nice setup. So I'll post that calendar link. Whatever that thing's called. What is that thing called? Calendarly something?
Calendly or something. I don't know. It's
Okay.
Yeah, Calendly. Yeah, something like that.
All right. I got to get set up with that. Yeah.
Alice is doing the same thing so that we can do the same thing with her.
Cool. Okay.
Did, but
Terrific. All right. We'll have a good afternoon, and see you in a couple of weeks back in class or on the Calendarly.
sounds good to me. Thanks.
You too.
Right.
Have a good day.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, Linda. Bye, Karen.
Bye, guys. I'm sorry I broke everything.
No, that was me. I mean, you had the idea to break everything, but I broke it. So
That's
see you around.
See you. Bye bye.